Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everyone is staying safe and keeping healthy. For those who just joined us, question and answers are open forum for you. Please be aware there's a chat box that you can write your questions in, and your question and answers also is right there on your screen. Be sure to go ahead and ask questions as Lisa is doing her presentation, okay? Our presenter today is Lisa Anderson, founder and president of LMA Consulting Group, a firm that specializes in manufacturing strategy and end-to-end supply chain transformation. Lisa, as you also know, is our president of the APICS Inland Empire chapter. Lisa has been named in the top 46th most influential in supply chain management by SAP, and is a much sought after speaker and an influencer, and is being called upon today for supply chain and manufacturing leaders as they wish to understand her point of view as it relates to the impact of COVID-19. She has been featured in many radio shows recently. If you have not heard them, we encourage you to go to her website, lmaconsulting.com, and check out all her radio show commentaries. And also she has been quoted in many newspapers with regard to the impact of COVID-19 on manufacturing, distribution, and basically understanding the end-to-end supply chain impact of this situation. So with that, Lisa, tell us, where is the toilet paper?
Yep, everybody does want to know. I have actually been called by sports radio to comment on where's the toilet paper, because after all, no one is playing sports these days. So, so before I get started, though, I'd like to make sure that I say that our APICS Inland Empire chapter is hosting these Navigating Through Volatility webinar series on how to navigate through this COVID-19 and emerge successfully out the other side. So we would welcome you to join us on our future sessions. We continue to add them. We have a couple coming up on the ports and on how to create even closer relationships with customers, and several others. So please join us for those. But in the meantime, we'll talk about where's the toilet paper. In essence, it's the misalignment of demand and supply. So let's see here. All right, so this is what my grocery store looks like. I don't know about yours, but well, actually, most of the time mine has 0 on the wall. Toilet paper is actually produced in the US, so it's not as though we're waiting for it to be shipped from Asia or something. So it's just a matter of hoarding, in essence. We're all worried, and I don't know, none of us want to run out of toilet paper. So hoarding has created this misalignment of demand because each person doubles their consumption of toilet paper as far as what they purchase, which unfortunately in the beginning we did much more than that, but let's just say we doubled our consumption. It's created a complete ripple throughout the supply chain where the stores are supplied by distribution centers, and those distribution centers are, it depends on the on each individual store's supply chain, but generally speaking, the simplest of matters is each store is supplied by a distribution center. For a while, my store told me that the distribution center was just supplying them as fast as they could, but eventually the distribution center ran low on toilet paper as well as other supplies, and then they had to be supplied by the next person in the supply chain, and then it continues to go because there's our supply chains these days are quite extended. And then there's material suppliers, so you can't just produce when you want more. So this has created a vast ripple in the supply chain, and I talked about this on one of my interviews was on Rip City Radio. So I'll attach this slide deck to our APICS Inland Empire webpage when we're finished. And then once we actually get this supply back, once things calm down and everyone is not hoarding toilet paper anymore, the resupply of toilet paper and everything else is going to create like a new ripple effect. So we'll talk a bit more about all of this. So this is what I'm talking about, is the bullwhip effect. Those of you that are APICS students and or APICS instructors will know what this is. Clients and colleagues, some of you may have heard of it. But the bullwhip effect is, like as it sounds, it's, as you can see in the visual here, it looks like you start with the customer, who typically speaking, the bullwhip is just a small increase in demand by multiple customers. Obviously, with the toilet paper effect, it's more than a small increase in demand, because we all went out and probably bought 3 to 5 times as much as we needed. And which created a huge impact in the customer. But this is assuming a small impact. So let's just assume that we only bought, we only bought like 20% more, which would definitely not be true, but let's just pretend that. So if we only bought 20% more, like this is the simplest of supply chains as well, because every client that I have has more legs to their supply chain than this, but this gives you an idea. Goes from the customer to the distributor, and then the ripple gets larger because, we don't know what's going on, why the customer is doing this. I mean, in this case, we know what's going on, but the distributor is trying to respond. Everybody starts ordering more. The manufacturer is next in line, sees even a bigger ripple effect and orders even more. And then the supplier at the end sees this massive increase. And then the supplier, and the supplier, it continues to get worse and worse as you go through the supply chain. So soon we have no toilet paper on any of the shelves, which is the situation we have at hand, when we actually can produce this in the US. And, those facilities are considered essential, so they're still running. Of course, there could be, they could be down in terms of people, but I would say we're going to talk a bit about the status of the supply chain and then come back to how we resolve this, but that's certainly not the problem. It's the hoarding of demand that's creating this issue. So it gets the whole supply chain off kilter. So the problem here is beyond the current situation. What do we do when we try to get it back in shape again? One of our APICS Inland Empire board members works with Niagara, who supplies bottled water. They're seeing the same thing. They can't keep it on the shelves. It's ridiculous. He's in purchasing. So if he was to order what the demand is showing, it would be a ridiculous high order. So what should we do? Because where everybody keeps buying this. So it's really a challenge, because eventually it's just going to all shut off and it's going to go to zero, which will be certainly a big problem. So I wanted to bring this up next, and that is the inventory levels or capacity levels. So when we're going through this supply chain, each person in line can address part of these ripples in the supply chain if they have inventory. Because inventory, the point of inventory is actually, there is no point of having inventory if it's not going to cover your demand changes, demand volatility, which is what we're experiencing now, delivery performance issues, which is really not the issue right now, or like transaction accuracies. But at this point, our demand is ridiculous. So as you can see, the part that's covered, this is water and rocks in the water. So the part that's covered by water is inventory. So it means that, we can experience some ripple in demand, and, we won't know the difference. It doesn't matter. But once we go past where the water line is, we're going to have a big problem. And so that's the point of inventory. And as we all know, because we live in the lean world, we're not prone to having extra inventory. But what does extra mean is really the question. I mean, no one plans for a pandemic. However, there are going to be some companies that have a strategic inventory of certain key, could be of the finished good like toilet paper, or it could be of key raw materials, because the next person in line is going to be the raw material supplier. And if you don't have raw materials, it doesn't matter how many people you have and how many shifts you have, you're not going to be able to make up for the demand spike. So the question is, how much strategic inventory do we have throughout our supply chain, and where is it? Because where is it's a whole nother story as well. So now I thought I'd back up for a minute here and talk a little bit about the current state of manufacturing and supply chain. I've been very, very busy since this coronavirus has hit, working with clients and that are dealing with some of these spikes, but also working on this webinar series and getting in touch with all of the experts in these industries so that we could, you know, provide as best information as we can to folks. So from a manufacturing point of view, I see that I need to update my bottom line here, but nevertheless, CMTA, which is California Manufacturing Technology Association, I believe, did a quick survey. You know, it wouldn't be statistically correct, but they did a survey, and 73% of manufacturers said that they were operating at greater than 50%. So manufacturing all in all is holding up a lot better than a lot of other industries for sure. And then informal surveys for folks who have all manufacturing clients, which I do as well. Typically speaking, the clients are diversified enough so that they have some essential what are considered essential businesses that they're supporting, and some that are considered non-essential, or that, you know, the foot traffic is down in the grocery stores and, you know, certain items aren't the ones that we're trying to hoard. So they have spikes in demand. Unfortunately, demand that makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, some of them are going up like crazy and others are dropping off like no tomorrow. So, but all in all, after talking with a lot of different people, and I'm also in a CEO group where they have multiple groups of CEOs throughout the area that are all manufacturers. Typically speaking, they are all still running. Now, I do have one client that shut down because they weren't considered essential. But all in all, I would say 70 to 80% of manufacturers are still running currently in Southern California because they supply key industries, which would be food. Of course, food is largely running. Of course, it depends on who you supply. I do work with a food bar manufacturer. One of their clients is Starbucks, and Starbucks is by no means running at full operations right now. So that volume has tanked. However, food bars that people would buy in the grocery stores that they would consider ones that they could store and hoard, those would be, you know, having a spike in demand. So generally speaking, though, 70 to 80% of manufacturers are running, and of the ones that are running, I would say that we also believe that they're running at 70 to 80% capacity. So it's and the 70 to 80% of those that are running, I actually, from most of the surveys, it's really 80 to 90%, but I'm being conservative here. So obviously food and medical are up, and non-essential, you know, defense is still running. Obviously commercial aerospace is like in the tank, shall we say. But a lot of the industries that are in Southern California support these key industries, like building products, construction products is considered essential. Logistics is considered essential. So that's why we have the vast majority are running. As I said, actually out of everybody I talked to, there's only like a handful of people who know of anyone that wasn't running. It's just whether they're running, you know, they're only running to about 70 to 80% though. So the tricky part that they're having in manufacturing is keeping enough employees. With that said, they're not like dropping like flies with COVID-19, thank goodness. But you know, there's certainly concerns about that. People have children, so they're having to have flexible work schedules, or they may not be able to come in. So those types of things are, or they're just afraid. So that did come up in my conversations with folks. But generally speaking, it's not a severe enough problem where it's causing an issue. They're able to ramp up. But the supply chain is a big challenge in manufacturing. So getting the materials from others is certainly more of a challenge. So let's see, next we have the Asian supply chain. So certainly this virus started in China, so they had a shutdown far quicker than we did. And of course, it came right on the at the same time as Chinese New Year. So generally speaking, there's been a delay of 2 to 3 months in the Asian supply chain because of the coronavirus. But China is back now to 80 to 90%. And most everybody that I'm talking to is saying 90%. However, John Tulak was on our webinar last week, I believe, where he was telling us about all the different countries around the world and what's happening. And he said that although China is at 90%, they're not likely to go to 100% anytime soon because they have sent the migrant workers home and there's no sign of them coming back. However, they may not be needed right now because our demand is being reduced, as well as the demand in Asia. So nevertheless, they are back and running. South Korea and Vietnam weren't as impacted as China was. So but however, their demand is off because they supplied China. So it's a catch-22, but they weren't really impacted nearly to the same degree from the coronavirus. And then a Kearney study said that a reshoring index shows a dramatic reversal of a 5-year trend with domestic U.S. manufacturing in 2019 gained significantly greater than the other 14 Asian exporters. So what that means is before this coronavirus hit, we were already seeing a dramatic change in our sourcing of supply, and we're moving back towards the U.S. and Mexico. And certainly that's only gonna be exaggerated further with this coronavirus. So it's there's a lot of moving pieces that's gonna create this supply shock, if you will, a resupply shock. And what can we do about it all? So the bottom line, really, from an Asian supply chain point of view, is that they are back online, but now we're down, and so there's really nowhere to send everything, and so it's going to create havoc at the ports and everywhere else. And generally speaking, manufacturing is starting to move much quicker to the U.S. and Mexico and to smaller Southeastern Asian nations, like led by Vietnam, because they're trying to find a more, I don't know. I mean, now that prices have gone in alignment, really, for non-commodity products, they're looking for, other options. So if you are dealing in a commodity product, it probably won't come back to the U.S. and Mexico unless they find a way to make it more value added, but it will probably move. Now, it can't all move from China anytime soon. So this is going to be a very interesting and worrisome situation to navigate, because certainly not everybody can move out of China at once, and it would also create havoc to have that happen. So it's going to be tricky it's going to be really neat. We're going to be in greater demand as supply chain leaders than ever before to try to figure out what to do no matter where you are in the supply chain. So the ports are operating, but the volume is down. So they, of course, experienced a delay from Asia. So for 2 to 3 months during the coronavirus, they weren't receiving very many ships at all. And there was a stockpile of empties all in the wrong place, which is part of the problem here. Like I said, China's back online, about 80 to 90%. And the ports are operating about 85% of operations. I just was on a call Friday about that. And the workers really aren't a problem. I mean, they're continuing to operate at this 85% level, and it's not showing an issue. However, all in all, the volume is down. So Long Beach container volume was down 6.8% in Q1. Now that might be down versus their forecast. So it's not like the LA numbers at 18%. That's year over year. So you got to know what numbers you're looking at. But nevertheless, they were both down in Q1. And that's because of the coronavirus, as well as, I don't know, could be, the problem is this reshoring is getting mixed up with coronavirus. So who knows what's going on, which is part of this. How do we get alignment between demand and supply? And then Q2 is estimated, though, to be really bad because of the, because of the U.S. being shut down. So it's estimated to be at negative 14% for Long Beach. And in March, which is the only data that we have, firm, it was 30% down. One thing that David Porter said on our webinar last week, and if you weren't able to catch the webinar on the transportation, on transportation and staffing and where things stood, I thought he did a fabulous job. It's in our archives and you should check it out. But he basically said that more ships are parked than were parked in 2008, 2009. So it's, now think about this. They're parked, but parked where? They're all parked in the wrong place, of course. So that's the problem with these types of things. When you have a supply spike and then a trough, everything is always in the wrong spot. And so I see that we have a few questions, so let me ask them here. So we have, are we going to be in greater demand? Do you mean U.S. manufacturing? Yes, U.S. manufacturing is going to increase for sure. The reshoring study showed that even before coronavirus, there was a dramatic shift. Now, dramatic is dramatic, but I mean, it's compared to where we were before. There's a lot of companies that are looking at bringing volume back to the U.S. And the reason is that the tariffs was one, but another one that I've been talking about for a long time now is the Amazon effect. And that's that everybody wants everything right away, which right now everybody wants toilet paper right away, but everybody wants everything right away. So it's very hard to do if you have to wait 3 months for it to get here. And how do you predict what inventory do you have on hand? Where do you place strategic inventory? It's just all a problem. So with the Amazon effect taking place, costs coming into alignment to the total cost. Of course, the cost of labor is going to still be less in China, but the total cost, if you add up all of the inventory costs, all of the IP costs, all of the costs involved are in alignment, unless you're a commodity product. If you're a commodity product, you're probably not going to move it to the US. You might move it to Mexico, or you might just move it to Southeast Asia. But basically, all in all, lots of people are moving, according to the studies, a lot of people are looking at moving back to the US, and that has definitely spiked since the coronavirus. And it's, I can tell you that my clients are thinking the same. And then did the port have anything to do with turning shipments back? Well, they didn't turn, I think the deal is that they're congested. So if they, or I should say, like when you have everything that's in the wrong place, you have backups, you have like lines in the grocery store, right, to get in. Like my grocery store will only allow a certain number of people in. So you have lines in all the wrong places, but you have product in all the wrong places. So everything's in the wrong place. So the port's not like turning people away, at least according to what they said, but they're trying to operate, these aren't simple operations to keep going. So they're dealing with what they have, which is the right now they're expecting a bunch of ships. And the problem with that is all of our warehouses are full, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I see Ellen is asking here, I heard that there are different manufacturers that make household toilet paper and others that make commercial toilet paper for restaurants or businesses. Why don't the commercial makers change packaging for household use? Totally agree, Ellen. That's exactly what I've been like harping on here. And one of the things I mentioned on every radio show I was on is that we need to not only convert, like products. So like you said, commercial toilet paper to household toilet paper and vice versa, because certainly with everybody shut down, commercial toilet paper is really not needed. Very much anyway. I mean, our essential businesses are minuscule compared to, in total, compared to all the other businesses. So we absolutely should be doing that. I'm sure that they are working on that, but that just speaks to one of the other topics we'll talk about, which is, our ability to be agile and be flexible, but also how can we repurpose equipment? How can we repurpose skills? Making, and I'll get to some of the solutions here, but, since you asked, I'll just bring it up, that's what the CMTA, which is like I said, the California Manufacturing Association has a list of folks who can repurpose or do move skills. And so they're trying to do this. And that's one of the reasons why APICS and Lynn Empire is doing these webinars and we're sending out emails, because there are several groups that are trying to coordinate that to happen. So I think that's a great point. And I am totally on board with that. Now, Parzad's asking, if I am a toilet paper or a mask manufacturer, should I increase my capacity if I had surge capacity, or will I be stuck with inventory? Well, that's a good question. That's what Kevin asked, who works with the bottling manufacturer. So really what's happening here is, if you're a toilet paper or a mask manufacturer, for sure, you should be increasing your capacity right now, because this is not going to, the latest statistics, according to John Tulak, who was on our webinar last week, and from all the other folks, is that this is not likely to go away for good until the vaccine is developed, which is going to be a year. That doesn't mean that hopefully some of these other medicines that are being developed will work so that we can get back to more of a regular life, because if we don't, we're going to have a serious issue, because our economy, cannot function with everybody sitting in their house. With that said, though, it's likely to come back. It's going to, the mask manufacturers are absolutely needed. Toilet paper, after all, it's not as though we're going to need more toilet paper than we used to need in the past. So that's a little iffy. I would be cautious about what to do there. Because you don't want to go too far in the other direction. And unfortunately, toilet paper is bulky, so it's hard to store. And you're going to have to err a little bit on the side of having more than you need, because there's such a need right now. And those folks that have supply are going to be remembered. So you're going to have to go a little bit on that side. But remember, anything that you produce extra suddenly is going to get turned off, and then you're going to have to figure out a way to store it or repurpose it or something. From a mass manufacturing standpoint, though, for sure, the recommendation would be to increase capacity. So add shifts, run overtime, partner with another organization that has like type skills that may not do anything like what you do, but they have people who are available because they've been shut down, and they might want to keep them employed, and they could have some light skills. So there's a lot of options, and people who are making temporary partnerships that are willing to do things like that are going to be much more successful than somebody who plodges away every day trying to increase capacity by 2% a day. It's just not going to cut it. You're going to be left in the dust. Now let's see, Parzad's saying, if consumers are not going to brick and mortar stores, what can I do now to improve my sales online? Oh, wow, that's a good question. I'll just keep answering these questions because I think it's important, and we'll get through what we can, and then we'll go from there. So that's actually, I was just on a call earlier, right before this meeting, with a client. This client does make food, and so but they're, strangely enough, seeing a decrease in volume. They saw a really, really big increase, not surprisingly, and then they saw it drop off a cliff. Of course it did not do, but that's what they're seeing. And so the problem is that the brick and mortar stores don't have the foot traffic. Even the grocery stores, in this case, or the Targets, don't have the same foot traffic because of this pandemic. So what they're seeing is about 30% less volume because of the fact that there's smaller foot traffic. Certainly for non-essential items, the volume has dropped off even more because consumer buying behaviors are changing. So what they are seeing, though, is that the e-commerce, anything that was sold through e-commerce channels is increasing. So you're absolutely right, Barzad, that is what's on fire right now. And I think one of my future slides, so I will get there, has statistics about the hiring going on in e-commerce. But so we'll come back to this, but basically in e-commerce, unfortunately it's not a snap of your fingers and it'll all be sold online story. It never is that simple. But you should start now, for sure. E-commerce is not going to go away. The good news here is that even after the pandemic, people who never even used like Zoom before are using Zoom. Like I had a Easter Zoom call with my mom, my aunts, my brothers and nephews and whatnot else. And a lot of those people have never used Zoom before. But now that they've done it, they were like, well, this is kind of cool. We'll do this again. Well, the same thing is happening here with e-commerce is once they've ordered online, it's not like they'll order everything online because that's not going to happen, but they will, it's likely to continue to increase. So for sure, you should be pursuing that strategy. There are some e-commerce in particular strategies and consultants that help with that. But really the idea is you have to have a attractive, easy to use online store that is very like Amazon-like in its abilities, which is not the easiest thing to create, but that's, we'll start there and I'll see if I can come back and answer more of the question. But you have to have a attractive, think about people buying, instead of browsing in a store, they're browsing online. If they can't find things, it's a problem. If they don't like the way they look, doesn't matter if they actually look better, they're not going to buy them. It's like you're looking in a store. So that's the key things. And then of course you have to get people to know about your website. So you have to find ways to bring traffic to your website by doing things like we're doing right here, offering a webinar of value where people might come and check your website out, those kinds of things. But it's tricky. You might offer a promotion especially for like a food product, to get people to try it, because once they've tried it, they might like it. They might decide to keep buying it. So you would want to, offer promotions for sure, because that's one of the, it's popular certainly in the food and beverage industry. Now, let's see, I have other questions here. It will be interesting how U.S. companies are going to handle the cost of their products manufactured in Mexico, when the main reason to migrate all the manufacturing companies from Mexico to Asia was due to lower wages. Well, the whole thing's going to be interesting here. However, that's the problem, I think, is that a lot of, well, let's put it this way. Certainly a lot of companies, it made sense to move to Asia because of the cost of the time. But there was also many companies that just said, you know what? The board of directors says we're moving, go ahead and move. Just do it, whether it makes sense or not. So not always did they even make sure it made sense. We had a panel at one of our executive panel and networking symposiums at APICS and Lynn Empire in the past, and this topic came up. And one of the panelists said that, and he worked for a large company, that they had outsourced to Asia, and then he found out that they weren't actually saving any money. They were, in fact, it was causing them worse trouble. So the good news for them is they were large enough that they could just source their Asian demand from China and then reverse their sourcing decision. But that's, a larger company. For most of us, once we've outsourced and we've, bought the capital, you are not getting that money back. You are not getting your equipment back. So it's a harder decision. So that's the challenge here. It's the labor costs. I mean, Mexico is a very good alternative to China, and it's absolutely going to be coming on fire. And we actually have a webinar on how to evaluate starting production in Mexico and what you would need to do. So stay tuned for that webinar. Let's see, I typed it. Okay, so we have, CJ. Hi, CJ. So CJ asks, order backlogs internationally are dropping. That has been driven by the purchasing for a month. So it's only just beginning to hit manufacturing. Absolutely. I mean, CJ is totally right, is that there's going to be a massive issue here, because now that China's come back online, there is all sorts of ships coming because the product's been ordered. And remember, it has to be ordered at least 3 months in advance. However, we've gone on lockdown and people aren't buying. So, and of course, everything is in all the wrong places, as I said before. So we're going to not know what to do because everything's going to be stuffed, and it is going to be a massive supply chain shock. So that's why we have to do, that's why we're very needed, and we have to look at how we're going to do these things. So transportation, the bottom line here is trucking is down and the railroads are down too. Let's see, well, here it is, auto tanks, but tanks is not right. Oh, I know. As the automobile industry is tanked, and so therefore that's affected the railroad. But they're down. But the railroads are generally speaking more responsive. They'll just take capacity out. That's good for them and their pricing. It's not necessarily good for us in terms of routes and things. So according to a CCJ survey, and this is what David Porter said last week, there's a 55% report a decline in freight in the last month, and they expect it to continue. So it's basically dropping, like CJ said. Everything's dropping. 25% of the fleet surveyed reported already reducing driver workforces. And of course, like all the terminals are, everything is if you think about all the trucks, all the ships, everything is in the wrong place because it's wherever it ended up, which is not where it needs to be now. So that's a real challenge here. So we have to find a way to get all of our transportation assets in the right place so we can get the supply chain started. Getting it started is not something where you just decide, hey, today I'm starting the supply chain back at 100%. It's not going to happen. We're going to have to start it in a more controlled ramp up way. So the load to truck ratio was holding up really well, but it's fallen off the cliff now very recently as as the shutdown effects have started to take place. And then there's what David Porter was calling zombie carriers, but basically they're carriers that were on the bubble before all this started. He says that the bailouts or the funding may help them for a while, but they're very unlikely to make it through. So that, if you can think about it, that means that there's a few carriers, some of which are really quite large. Again, listen to his webinar. But if they go under or get absorbed, again, everything's in the wrong place. You have loads with one person, and that person goes out of business. What are you going to do? That's true for your suppliers too. So this is all something we have to be on top of. I mean, if you're in supply chain, well, we should be all busier than we ever were before. However, if we work for a non-essential company, we may not be, but it would be great if we could find a way to reallocate this, because we're going to need all of us to figure out how to handle this. And of course, they're canceling truck orders as well. Let's see. So I'm getting a question about, are the stats national or California or global? Well, CMTA was a California stat. CCJ survey is national. Let's see. So from a passenger point of view, or from a flight point of view, passenger flights are non-existent. Like, I talked to somebody yesterday who works at an airport, and he saw, like, till late in the afternoon, like 20 people total. So I don't even know how they fly anywhere. But the cargo aircraft is reaching record utilization levels because, as we said, e-commerce is going like gangbusters. So the major airlines are all flying cargo now. So 16% of Aeromexico's fleet is already flying cargo, and all 4 of the US airlines have started flying cargo. So now it's not quite that simple, because after all, they have a lot of seats in their plane. It's not terribly geared to cargo flights. I toured the Ontario airport with the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, and the cargo planes look very different from passenger planes, but they're doing their best. So it's, certainly flights are a problem, or I should say, all of that's in the wrong place too, spiking one way or the other. Then we have the warehousing and 3PLs. It totally depends on the customer. I talked to several folks in this industry, and e-commerce is up, so they can't keep enough people there. So Amazon's hiring 100,000 new people and increased pay by $2 an hour. Walmart's already hired 100,000 new people and expects to get to 150,000 people. So that's like a lot of hiring. And as David said, the 3PLs have an opportunity right now to leverage technology, because everybody's going to want to be figuring out how to take cost out, how to improve processes, how to handle this bullwhip effect. And so people like us in supply chain are going to be in demand for the smart companies. So it's always a caveat there. In the Great Depression, as well as in the Great Recession, those people that invested smartly, I'm not suggesting we invest like crazy people, because that's obviously not the smartest move right now. But those people who invested smartly outperformed their competition and left them in the dust. I'm working on an ebook on how manufacturing and supply chain should, what priorities we should be focused on and how to come out of this. So it's going to be available in the next week. It's going to be free download, so I'll let you all know. But one of the examples I used in there is during the Great Recession, Kellogg's and Post were selling cereal going into it, but it was a new commodity at the time. And during the Great Depression, Post did like everybody else did, cut back, tighten their belts and everything else, which is not abnormal, of course. And Kellogg's did the opposite. They doubled their advertising budget, and they actually, hired some key people, etc. And Kellogg's is the one that sailed to new heights. So that's not to say you should obviously double your budget and do crazy things, but you should look at what you should be doing. So anyway, warehouses are stuffed, however. So where will this product go? The ports are trying to figure that out, because after all, they can't sit at the port. Or if they do, no other ships are going to get in with essential products. So what will we do about that? And if all the trucks are in the wrong place, that's another problem. So this is definitely an issue. Lorena's asking, if we can't flatten the COVID-19 curve, what will be the new scenario? Well, I don't know if you mean with the disease itself or the supply chain, but the idea here is that we should be able to, from all the experts, like I'm certainly not an expert, but from all the experts, we should be able to flatten the curve. However, the problem here is that the Inland Empire Economic Partnership did a economic forecast and said that if we can if we do the stimulus, which we've been doing, and we find medicines that will work to alleviate the biggest effects of COVID-19, then the economy is likely to pick back up or level out in third quarter and pick back up in the fourth quarter. If that's not true, then all bets are off. It's going to be, another year. So that's because we have to wait for the vaccine. So it'll just depend, because I think we've never been in a situation like this. During Alan Dunn's webinar, he said that it's unprecedented. So it's hard to say, but consumer behaviors will change. Other behaviors will change. And those people that are thinking and are ahead of, or I should say proactive during this time frame, are going to come out ahead of the pack or winners. So this really speaks to, we need to get, we need to be thinking. Now let's see, there's another question, I think. Oh, so from the supply chain point of view. Okay, so well, Lorraine, I answered about COVID. From the supply chain point of view, we will have to get this all leveled out. And so what we're going to need is experts like us that can proactively work. I mean, basically companies are not going to be able to start up and just say, hey, I'm starting production tomorrow and everything will be fine. It's not happening. I mean, really what's going to have to do is ramp up slowly and in a controlled way. We're going to have to look at priority customers. And so we're going to talk a bit more about how to do that coming up. So I'll come back to it. And then CJ, I see you raised your hand, but I don't know if you have a question. So send it in if you do. Okay, let's see. So the cause of all this is demand and supply are out of alignment. Not surprising here, but that's the issue that's been happening. So this is a chart that kind of shows where it fits here. So we have demand plan, which is basically sales forecasting. How do we know what we're going to sell? Then we have inventory management strategy, which is to some degree been done. So depending upon what your strategy was, this is where you are now. But that doesn't mean you have to stay in this position of where you are before. What I say is all bets are off. Rethink your entire supply chain, rethink everything, but don't be doing it in an analysis paralysis sort of way. You have to do it quickly and look at priorities. But the inventory management idea here is, or inventory management strategy is, did you have some of your key customers with extra inventory? because you wanted to account for them being critical customers, if you will. Did you have critical supplies with strategic inventory? Did you look at your demand profile? So customers that were, items that are more erratic than others, did you have inventory to cover that variance? If you did those things originally, you're probably better off, but it doesn't mean you won't be fine, because after all, no one's fine with demand patterns that look like the ones we're experiencing, but you'll be in better shape. And then it goes into SIOP, and I'm going to talk about SIOP next because that's a key point to this. That's sales, inventory, operations planning, and how you align demand with supply. I'm going to talk through it because I think it's really quite important, but I don't think we can wait around for a lengthy process. So we have to do an accelerated version of SIOP to get things going. And proactive management of demand is where we start, which we'll talk about next. And then really it goes to the execution piece, which is the master production schedule, and MRP and DRP, which relates to how do we have the right materials and the right transfers between sites going on. And then I have to say, none of those will happen if we don't have the transportation assets in the right place to get them from place to place. And then we have the production schedule. So this just gives you an idea of how it all fits together. And then we'll talk through each of the areas. So let's see. CJ said, as an FYI, CMTC has been tasked with getting California manufacturers safely back to work. Well, that's encouraging. That's great news. We all need to, that has to be one of the top priorities. And in the ebook, I start with HR and safety because that is where we have to start. However, by no means having, safe workers, but nobody with no work is not going to help. So we have to find a way to make all this come together. And that's what we'll talk about now. So number one is the proactive management of demand. We have to be all over demand. Like this ramp up here that I'm showing is what people thought before. By no means is what we're experiencing now, except for if you're a toilet paper manufacturer, perhaps. But know your customers. So I've been working with some of my clients, and we know who we're selling to, obviously. But do we know who those people are serving? That's the question. Because like this food bar manufacturer makes a good example. Sometimes we're selling to a Starbucks store. Well, that demand is not going to be as high because Starbucks stores are, well, actually by me, they're closed. Oops, I went too far. But by me, they're closed. And some of them are open through drive-thrus, but don't have any of these items on the drive-thru menu. So how will people know? It's similar to the website question. How will they know to buy it if it's not visible and looking appealing? So Starbucks, is an issue. But on the other hand, selling to a Target's volume is down by about 30% because of the foot traffic issue. So, well, depends. I mean, if you're toilet paper, you're still fine. But most items are not toilet paper. Toilet paper won't be fine at some point because everybody will have a stockpile. But they're down. So it's who are your customers? Or are they supplying grocery stores where lots of people are, going to grocery stores, and that's the only place they're going today. So it's knowing who your customers are, who your customers' customers are, your customers' customers' customers, like who's the end customer after all, and what does that demand pattern look like? So in the food category, it looks like consumer demand. But in the construction industry, it's not consumer demand. I mean, it's construction demand. So it depends. I mean, construction's considered essential business, but some construction is clearly a higher priority than others. So who exactly are your customers is the question. And even within a segment, there might be a strong customer and a customer that might go out of business, depending upon what's happening, or anything in the middle. So you really need to know who your customers are. You should understand your market. I hope that you do already, but by all means, get on top of it right now. Find out what's going on in your market. It sounds very simple, but talk to your customers. I mean, I can't tell you how many of my clients are so busy that they don't have time. But how is any of this going to help if we don't even know what our customers are doing? Because they don't even know what they're doing in many cases. So we have to get on the phone with them I was just on the phone earlier today with several business development folks talking to customers of my clients because we wanted to find out what was happening. And we found out some interesting things. It's true of every client. They always think that they know, and I do too. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not just my clients. We all think we know because we do this every day. But then when we get on the phone, we find out more things that we didn't know about before. So find out whatever you can about what's going on with them, because how are we going to figure out what to do with our supply side if we don't know what's going on with the customer side? Talk with your frontline resources. You'd be surprised. And this is sort of like a lean concept anyway, but we should be doing it. And that is talking with customer service, talking with our sales folks, talking with the people who deliver the product. I mean, a lot of those folks know a lot more than we give them credit for if we would ask. So these, as Alan Dunn said, these days we have to take the macroeconomic picture into account, because like the oil crisis was going on before coronavirus, but it's just aggravated. You know, all of these factors are aggravating things. So understanding what's going on in the macroeconomic environment needs to be taken into account. And we need to get proactive information on demand in the supply chain. So what I mean by that is, certainly talking to people is good, but if we can get information as to what our customers are selling or what our customers are using, like in aerospace, it's more what are they, well, in aerospace, like let's just say defense, because they're still working heavily. In defense, you know, like what they're using on the line, if we can be in sync with what's happening further into our supply chain, instead of waiting for their MRP systems to give us crazy erratic data, which is useless, we would be better off, clearly. So, and that's true for every customer I have in building products and in any industry. So the more data you can get into your supply chain, and don't think that you can't get it. I would tell you that 80% of the time, I talk with folks, they think they cannot get it. They can always get something. It's just what. So, you know, of course, wouldn't I love to have the perfect information sent to me daily in a EDI transaction or something that would give me exactly what's happening. That would be lovely, but that's not happening by tomorrow morning. So let's just figure out what we can get quickly and get a better picture of what's happening further in our supply chain, because we need to be able to give this data to not just us, but our supply base. And we even need to know if our supply base is, you know, if we should shore that up. So we ask about outliers and items with high forecast errors. So if you're fortunate to have a forecasting system like a Forecast Pro or something like that, you know, obviously focus in on those items that are the outliers, or the ones that are not making sense. At the moment, I gotta imagine that almost every product is an outlier. But if you have a system like that, you should be looking for, you know, over the short term, what changes in demand are you seeing, because you can pick up on them quicker. But even if you don't have a system, don't worry about it. I've never thought that a system was required to make progress anyway. In some industries, I sure would prefer it, but it's never required. So you can do the same thing in Excel. You can figure this out. Don't get stuck in this analysis paralysis thing, though. I have to say, just look at the priorities, pick out the key things, and get on the phone or talk to people, because clearly you're not going to go visit them today. So the proactive management of demand is not a new concept. It's just that we should be all over it right now, and to the exclusion of all else. I convinced one client to cancel all their other meetings. So let's figure this out. But basically, generally speaking, the proactive management of demand is something we should be doing. According to Gartner research, for every 1% improvement in forecast accuracy, you can have a 7% reduction in finished good inventory, which is huge. I mean, it's not going to be true in this is across the board type figures, but nevertheless, it does not matter. It's big. Or a 9% reduction in obsolete inventory, which would be awesome. Certainly that's going to be one problem coming from this situation. And then AMR research says that 3% increase in forecast accuracy means a 2% increase in margins. My gosh, can you imagine? 3% does not sound terribly hard to achieve, and it isn't. I'm finding that, you know, with clients we can achieve that quite simply with some demand planning processes in SIOP, and 2% increase in margins is huge. So it's worth pursuing. So demand alone won't do it, but you should start there. Because like, what good is your supply chain, including your manufacturing operations, if you don't have any demand or you don't even know what the demand is? You won't have anything in the right place at the right time, which is the point of supply chain. So we have to look at, we need to know, first of all, what our manufacturing capacity levers are, meaning can we hopefully, again, how agile have we been? But it's never too late to start. Hopefully we have cross-trained people so we can move people around where the demand is, because that's for sure needed today. If not, let's, be aggressive about getting that done. You have to use overtime. Why not partner with a local organization or an organization that may have people with skills that could supplement what you're doing? Why not retrofit equipment like Ellen was suggesting, so we can produce, especially if you're a non-essential business, why not retrofit equipment or partner with someone else to keep folks employed and running important items? Certainly medical supplies is a good one to be looking at. So look at all your capacity levers and then understand your supply base. That's actually the bigger problem right now. It appears as though manufacturing is responding pretty quickly, and I think it's because we've been so accustomed to cost cutting over the years, and like agile and lean and all these programs that were relatively, of course some are better than others, and the ones that are better are going to succeed here. But generally speaking, manufacturing is responding, but the supply base is having a heck of a time, and that's somewhat because of the bullwhip effect. But it's also because, like, I don't know, have we been giving information to our supply chain? I mean, if we haven't been proactively providing information, like in the sales inventory operations planning process, we would provide a high level forecast to our suppliers. Doesn't mean we have to commit to it, but we should be providing that. And then we could be setting up purchase arrangements where we, agree to a certain amount of capacity for the year, let's say, for key suppliers anyway. Doesn't mean we have to guarantee 100%. Probably the best practice is more around 80%. But basically, and then we get them going on some sort of like a Kanban type of process. It keeps things flowing. Well, if you don't have all that set up, it doesn't mean it's hopeless, but it sure means that you should get in touch with your supply base. And you should be thinking about what are your key materials, and which ones have alternate sources of supply. Because if it's a key material, but you have plenty of sources of supply, it's certainly not the same level of priority as a key material with one source of supply. That's clearly more of a much larger problem. Hopefully we know how financially capable our suppliers are, but if we don't, we better find out. Because the more we put into this, the more, if we're more dependent on one supplier and they're not financially viable, it's going to be a problem. We need to be all talking to our suppliers, just like our customers, all over them. If there's as Ellen Dunn said, if there's a place to hire right now, purchasing and planning might be a place. I think that's a place to think about here. I know everybody's reducing people, but Ellen, since you're on the webinar, one of Ellen's clients that I shared with her, I love to tell the story. I'm going to tell it in my ebook too. But basically, they hired in the bottom of the recession somebody they didn't even think they needed, didn't have anything to do with, couldn't figure out anything to give them to do. They hired anyway because it was a great time to get talent. So I'm not suggesting that you just throw away money or anything, but strategic hire, certainly one where you need to figure out this supply chain situation, might be worth thinking about. It's also worth thinking about automation, after all, because if we can get a better picture into our supply chain, both through the customer and through the supplier with technology, if we can supplement human capacity with robots, and certainly from a demand planning point of view, artificial intelligence, certainly seems like it's well worth trying all of these pieces that will make us better. But don't get so lost in all these concepts that you don't get anything accomplished and you forget your priorities. So it's always one of those things that I point out. Take your transportation network into account. We need to be, even though right now the spot market is you could get better, less expensive loads, we need to be a customer of choice if we plan to succeed when this reverses. Doesn't mean you can't, like the best practice idea is like take advantage of spot rates from time to time, like, you know, the 80-20 approach. Save yourself a little bit of money on the 20% side, but keep your key transportation partners going, because they will need to be there when you ramp up. And that's true for backup supplies as well. Like when I was a VP of operations for a manufacturer of something similar to toilet paper, but it wasn't toilet paper. We adult incontinence products. We actually had to have our suppliers take a haircut, like reduced prices for a while, because we ran into some trouble with some acquisitions and system transformations. But we were always upfront with suppliers and proactively managed them and worked with them. And so when one of our key materials went on allocation because there wasn't enough, we did get it, surprisingly enough, because we were not big. We were not the, you know, the Procter & Gamble or the Nestle or the Boeing of the world. But we did get supply, and that's because we made ourselves a customer of choice or a supplier of choice. So think about that, because you need to add that into your equation and not just cut costs with no thought to anything else. So I'm going to go quickly through this so we can wrap up in the next 5 or 10 minutes here. So proactive management of inventory, that's where a lot of your questions were stemming over, but the inventory covers the demand and supply mismatch. That's the point of inventory. So we need to think, it's not a strategy across the board. So think about customer by customer, think about item by item, like priority items. So priority items, priority customers. I shouldn't have said item, like each item in particular, because I can just imagine us going into analysis paralysis by item. So think about categories of things, key customers, key items, profitable items. How should we make sure that we strategically have inventory of not everything, because we also will max out our warehouses and potentially run ourselves out of business by going into a cash crunch, which is one of the quickest ways to make to go bankrupt, is to run out of cash. So we have to be cognizant of this, increase our liquidity, get finance involved, but we should think about strategic inventory. And definitely it is the time where we want to have additional inventory over where we were before coronavirus, but we don't want to have it across the board. So get your supply chain leaders in the loop and thinking about this, because you don't want to do it across the board, but you do need to add some strategic inventory. And by the way, one of my clients in the past had strategic capacity. They just ended up like getting rid of it over time, because like everybody was, you know, with the lean movements and everything, they ended up getting rid of their extra capacity, and then they ended up in a world of hurt with service because they were accustomed to having capacity. I mean, capacity is similar to inventory, because if you can just turn on your manufacturing facility and you can increase inventory rapidly, why have finished goods like tying up more than they need to if you have excess capacity? So it's worth thinking about your capacity as well, and that could be people, machines, etc. The better aligned you are, the more proactive you'll be on SIOP, which leads us to get an accelerated sales inventory operations planning program going. And when I say accelerated, I mean you might just do a quick approach, like a rapid SIOP, and then you come back and add in the like nice to haves around the circles, or around the process, so that you can sustain it successfully. But I'll quickly go through this. You want all of your functions involved, is what this shows, and what I have found with SIOP is that you get the biggest and quickest results as soon as you get the people aligned. It actually has nothing to do with the demand and the supply most of the time. It has to do with the people, because once the people are on the same page, then miraculously everything else works out. It's actually quite weird, because sometimes I'm convinced too that we can only get to X point. As soon as we get the leaders on the same page, somehow we make it further than even I thought we could do, which is just weird, but it works every time. So the same thing here, you know, like just another view, getting all of the pieces of the puzzle working together. SIOP fits in the middle, so you have all of the demand on the left-hand side of this diagram in different ways, and all these things are things you should be looking at, where it stands today. And then you run it through a SIOP process, which is a monthly process of looking at your demand and what that means in terms of your business investment plan, which could be, you know, is very important today. Re-looking at CapEx, for example. Human capital, critical. I mean, after all, we got to figure out what's going on with our employees, manufacturing, assembly, purchasing, inventory. All of that's where SIOP fits. So it's pretty much in the middle of everything. Now, the other thing about SIOP is that it helps to reduce your risk and increase your flexibility and your predictability. What could be better than that? But you have to be focusing on the middle section here. And, you know, it depends on your business if you have a model. But basically, think about higher level categories. That's where you want to focus your attention and your priorities in this situation. Generally speaking, in SIOP, you want to focus attention there anyway, or it could be key customers in some businesses, but not at the item by location level. That's not to say that that's not important, because I just got through telling you the item, everything's in the wrong place is going to be a problem. But you can't do that until you have some clarity as to what's going on at the higher level anyway. So you got to start there. So SIOP bridges between the strategic and tactical. These slides will be available for you, so I'm gonna just, you know, show you this, but it's really important. Most of my clients, the problem is if they don't have SIOP in place, which is also called integrated business planning many times, is that they have a gap in the middle. So obviously that's a problem. Now, non-coronavirus environment, it can increase your sales growth. This is a study by the Hackett Group. It increases sales by 2 to 4%, reduces inventory 20 to 30%, and cost reductions by 5 to 10. So that's significant. But in the current environment, it basically will help us get our supply and demand aligned, which is nothing else matters. Like none of this matters, because we want to keep our customers. We want to keep our priority customers. Do we want to keep all? That's a very good question, because I don't know that the answer would be yes. I think what we want to do is figure out who are our priority customers. What does that mean in terms of our manufacturing plan, our suppliers, our transportation partners, our trusted advisors, and how do we go forward with that? We got to do a rapid assessment and get that in place. So last but not least, the SIOP is a monthly process where you go from a demand gathering process to where you put together like basically a sales forecast for about a year in most companies, but some aerospace, it can be up to like 3 years if you have longer term contracts. But typically speaking, you want at least a year. And then you do supply planning, meaning what does this mean in terms of capacity, staffing, supply base, etc. And then you do a joint meeting review, and then you get the executive team on the same page. Again, that's the 80-20, getting folks on the same page. I have an ebook out with manufacturing and supply chain predictions for 2020. Of course, it largely can be thrown out in a way, just because it's become sidetracked with the coronavirus. But so soon I will be having a ebook on what to do and how to ramp back up. So I will send this out to the group once we're finished. And let me see, I think I have a question here, so I'll answer that. Thoughts on the services supply chain. So in manufacturing, finishes and coatings, hardening, specialty work. Well, so it depends on what that's related to, Mike. So I would say that it's going to follow the same path as the manufacturing side. So meaning if the finishing work is related to essential manufacturing, it's going to balloon. If it's related to non-essential manufacturing, unfortunately, you're going to be stuck with a stockpile. And And unfortunately, the supply chain is connected. So it is true that we're only as strong as our weakest link, which makes me very more concerned about my weakest link right now, because when everything's running smoothly, we have extra inventory, you know, like everybody's happy. It doesn't really matter. And that's why we can get by. It's like the inventory rock theory I was showing you earlier, is now that things have spiked and we have this mismatch, that the problems are showing up. So we really want to, it depends on what industry you're serving, and it depends, like, who are your suppliers? One thing to think about is if your suppliers are, you know, you're an essential business, let's say, and you have suppliers, obviously. But let's say, do you know who they serve in addition to you? I mean, because if they're serving all essential businesses, do you have priority? If they're not serving essential businesses, do you think they might go out? Do you think they may have to shut down because they can't afford to just serve you? What's going to happen? So it's really important to understand who we're talking about. And unfortunately, in this case, you have to be specific as far as each person or company within your supply chain. And then let's see, we have one more question here. What to do with stockpiles that are perishable or expire? Well, that is a very good question. That's why my food clients are quite concerned, because in one industry that I'm working with, they have contracts in place, in essence, where they only have to have a commitment for 2 weeks to a month of what they would produce for finished goods. But for the materials, they have to take what would be out there for 3 months, because that's the lead time at this particular company. So that is exactly the concern, is what will happen if they expire, because of course some of them do expire. So another reason to be very proactive with your customer and your suppliers, and it depends, what is your agreements? That's actually another question on both the customer side and the supply side. Do you know what your agreements say? Because when things are fine, we don't worry about them. But when things aren't fine, what do they say? Because if they say you have to take materials up to a certain point, perhaps that customer is going to decide, as opposed to paying you money for nothing, they'd rather pay you money for product. And then you may end up with a spike. Of course, they may end up telling you at the last minute because they don't want it until they have to have it. So know your contracts and understand what could happen. But for sure, with ingredients, the closer you are with your supply chain, the more on top of it, the more you're working together and helping your customers. Call your customers and ask them how you can help. Who do you think they're going to work with later when you have to figure out how to handle all these mismatched supplies? Maybe they have a truck going in the direction you need to go. Who are they going to work with? Somebody they like, somebody that's helping them, or, you know, this person who's beating them up. So know your supply chain is really what I would what I would say. And so with that said, I think I've answered all of the questions. I want to make sure that I point out our next well, I can't get this to go out. Our next webinar series, let's see if I can bring up the, oh, here we go. Okay, I was worried I wouldn't get it to work. So, okay, so I'm today, but next week we have Eileen Angelo, or actually on Friday, talking about navigating coronavirus impact with our employees. A lot of those questions you're asking me, she's completely the expert, so please join us for that. Next week we have the ports, talking about what's happening at the ports. So for sure, that seems the key piece of our supply chain. Join us on April 21st. As I said, April 28th, we have navigating through volatility on moving manufacturing to Mexico, and what would it take? Because, I mean, after all, doesn't mean you have to do it. Understanding what your options are is smart in this situation. So find out what the options are. And then we also have, how do you create a closer relationship with your customers? I should have mentioned this earlier, but customer relationships, well, not customer, all relationships move faster during volatility and during crisis than any other time. So do you want them moving in the right direction or the wrong direction? They're going to move. They're just going to move really quickly in one or the other. So want to join us on May 4th to learn about how to get them moving in the right direction? That might be a good idea. And then we'll see if anyone has any suggestions. We may add a 3PL or a manufacturing executive to our mix. And we also have been archiving these webinars. So you'll see we had Jim Twirtle. Oh, Ellen, it reminds me of you. But Jim Twirtle talking about managing quality in China. We had Alan Dunn talking about managing global supply chains with the pandemic. We had Dan Gardner talking about 3PLs and carriers, but his is not archived because it was through him. And then we had John Tulak talking about navigating global supply chains. And we also had David Porter talking about freight flows. They were all really quite good, so hopefully you'll join us. And at APICS Inland Empire, sponsored by LMA Consulting Group, with our future webinars. And we are going to start online classes soon too, so that we can help supply chain professionals meet these expanded needs. So we hope you'll join us on at apics-ie.com.
Lisa, we have one last question.
Okay.
It was, can we download these slides?
Yes, we can. I'm going to post the webinar once I get this looking like these other webinars here. I'll post the webinars, and I'll also post the slides. You'll see a link with my webinar, and that'll be the slides. So they will be posted on APICS Inland Empire's website shortly. All right, I think we'll wrap it up, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Thank you.